All right. We did talk about duration as a measure of interest rate risk of bonds in general or fixed income portfolios. My plan today was to talk about using Eurodollars features to manage the risk of these, but given half the class is not here, I'm gonna do what I was gonna do on Wednesday. Let's talk about federal funds rates features. These are short-term interest rates futures contracts. And I'll explain what I mean by futures contracts.
Why do you ask me to pass these out and say something?
Sure.
If you want me to do it in the
Yeah,
class,
go
I
ahead.
can.
No, do it now
Okay.
before we get started.
Okay. She sent me a script and everything. Okay. Alright. Hi everyone. My name is Lauren. Maggie Abbey wanted me to pass out some flyers for an FMA student organization. It's basically a career fair for banking and finance students. It starts at 11, and I think it goes until 1, and there's also lunch. Let's see. There's going to be 18 different financial firms or companies there. So
You mentioned to say on what day.
Huh?
You forgot to say on what day.
Oh,
It starts at 11, but it's 11:20 now, so
yeah.
it's probably not today.
Yeah, no, it's not today. It's on Thursday. And if you're looking for an internship or something, it's a great thing to go to. Bring your resume, dress nice. I was informed to do this like an hour ago, so. Thank you.
No. Ivan? All good? All right. Now, who knows here what federal funds rate is? Anyone?
That's the rate that banks charge each other for the overnight. Or are you talking about what the actual rate is, or what?
No, what it represents.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so it's what banks charge each other to give each other funds so that they can meet the federal funds. Look, I guess,
So that they can meet their requirements.
yes.
I mean, banks have something called reserves. These are assets that they keep in reserve because Fed has reserves requirements. It varies from year to year, but it's around typically 8 to 10% of your deposits. You gotta keep them in reserves. So in case somebody wants their money back, you gotta have them available to pay them back. But you know, those funds cost money. You pay your depositors, not all of them, but most of them, some interest. So banks with excess reserves, they actually lend to each other overnight through a window called Federal Reserve. And they're basically rates they charge to each other for overnight loans, and they typically get Treasury bonds or bills as collaterals. So technically speaking, it's an overnight repo rate. Repo is short for repurchase agreement. It's a fancy way of doing a collateralized overnight loan. Now, why is it important? Anyone? Why do we call that federal funds rate? Anybody here is taking, financial institutions? 304? Okay. Now, Federal Reserve is an institution which is basically the central bank for the United States. Technically speaking, it's privately owned by the member banks, but it actually has a mandate from the United States government to manage the monetary policy in the United States. They have dual goals. One of them is to keep inflation under wraps. They typically want to keep it around 2%, and to the extent possible, promote growth. Reducing inflation to zero is not a problem. Hike the interest rates to 10%, that'll happen. But, that'll obviously create a big recession. That's why they kind of do it in a measured way. Their primary tool for that is the so-called federal funds rate. Anybody knows when's the next Fed meeting going to be? You don't follow that? It's a meeting called Federal Open Market Committee. Fed's Board of Governors and selected members of the member banks. There are 12 of them. Boston, New York, Atlanta, Miami, Cleveland, St. Louis, Minnesota, Dallas, San Francisco, and some more. You can look them up. These guys vote on what the target rate should be. Currently, it stands at between 525 and 550. So if ever that rate wants to get out of that range, it is the New York Fed that is in charge of that, actually. They intervene in that market. So if there's somebody who's willing to land below 525 for that night, they come in and they say, okay, we're going to get everything you're lending. They're going to actually ask to borrow at 525. If somebody wants to borrow about 550, Fed comes in and says, no, we can lend you at 550. More often than not, it's except for unusual days, that rate is typically around 8 to 10 basis points above the lower end of the Fed range, Fed target range. Currently at 525, 550. So-called effective Fed funds rate, short for EFFR. This is a volume-weighted average or volume-weighted median, actually, of all the transactions that happen on that day. And New York Fed actually keeps track of that. If you Google effective federal funds rate, Fed New York page comes up, and you actually have a nice little history, okay? Currently it's 533. When interest rates were really low, that rate tended to be about 10 basis points above the lower limit. But nowadays it's only about 8. As long as it doesn't go above 550, Fed is fine. As you can see, the 99th percentile is 550. There was even some 555s earlier, but they just come in and intervene when that happens. That means only 1% of the loans on that day, on a volume-weighted basis, were at 555 and higher. But Fed targets that the average or the volume-weighted median is actually inside their bracket. And you also see the history. For example, let's look at, that was the last time the target range was raised. On July 26th, FOMC had a meeting, and they raised that range by 25 basis points. In case you don't remember, what's a basis point? Anyone?
Is it 0.01%?
0.01 what? Yes. It's basically 1% of 1%. So 10,000 basis points is equal to 100%. Think of it that way. And we actually have a futures market that makes bets on the average, or the monthly average rather, of EFFR for a given month. The way these things work, let me go to, if you Google 30-day federal funds futures, it's a contract that's traded on CME, which is short for Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Come on. Oh, let's look at the specs first. The way the contract works, 4167 times contract IMM index. That's actually 100 minus the rate. And the rate is the arithmetic average of daily effective federal funds rates during contract month. So if the rates go up, that IMM index, or the price actually goes down, and vice versa. So if you want to bet that interest rates, the federal funds rates are going to go up, you need to short the contract. Bets if you want to bet that EFFR monthly average will be up, you need to short the contract. Because price equals 100 minus reference average, and let's call that R. Remember, shorting means you're betting that something is going to go down, right? So if you're betting that interest rate is going to go up, that necessarily implies price is going to go down, so you want to short. If you want to bet that EFFR